Welcome back to Angie and Christie Right Now. Today we're diving into a world of love, rivalry, and video games with a guest whose debut novel is sure to take the gaming and romance world by storm. We're thrilled to welcome an Asian American writer who crafts stories as rich as the video games they love to play. With degrees from both Harvard University and Harvard Business School, this author blends the intensity of competition with the richness of swoony romance in their debut novel, Single Player. When they're not writing or playing tabletop RPGs, our guest is either romancing video games NPCs or sharing laughs with their wife Audrey and dog Gingko in Boston. In Single Player, our guest brings us a queer enemies to lovers workplace romance that's as fierce as it is heartwarming. When two video game creators, Li and Andi Zhang, clash over how to create the next big hit, sparks fly both in and out of the game. With gaming culture, love, and personal stakes colliding, this novel offers a unique and delightful take on romance and rivalry. We can't wait to dive into the writing journey, the love of gaming, and of course, the world of Single Player. So grab your controllers and your heartstrings. It's game on. Let's give a warm welcome to Tara Tai. Tara, thank you so much for coming on our show.
Hello. It's so great to be here.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add to the biography, the intro?
No, that was fantastic. And I guess if watchers are curious, this is the gorgeous cover of the book. It was illustrated by Mallory Hare, who is just incredible. She does incredible line work on her character art. So I'm just floored and showing off the cover every chance I can.
You
Yes, definitely.
absolutely put it in your background if you want to. I don't care. It's gorgeous. It's fun. We love it. And the first question that we always ask our authors who come onto our podcast is, how did you know you wanted to be a writer, especially since there's a business school little foray in there? So how did that all work out?
Yeah, I don't think I realized you're going to be reading that part of the bio out loud, but here we are. Yeah, I don't think I ever knew I wanted to be a writer in the same way that like I didn't really know I wanted to be a human or I wanted to be a reader or all these things. You sort of just like fall into it, and it's such a like integral part of who I am and what I enjoy and how I get energy day to day. Just being able to create and create worlds, create characters, hopefully for someone else to consume one day. I don't think it was the one day that I woke up when I was like 4 years old. I was like, I'm going to be an author. I'm going to be a novelist. So I guess going all the way back, the first time I started writing in memory, and it's probably a false memory at this point, but my brain tells me it's true, is when I was 4 years old. And I remember standing next to my mom at the stove and saying, I've got an idea for a great book. And it's these two brothers in ancient China who hate each other, and then one dies, and then the other one feels a lot of remorse about hating his brother. So that's probably where the earliest memory of where it started. And then, throughout elementary school and middle school, I wrote a lot of fantasy knockoffs of basically whatever I was reading at the time. So Redwall, Tamora Pierce, Dragonlance. Yeah, so started from there.
Awesome.
That's really good. And that's really early, actually, because
Yeah.
I mean, if you were writing in middle school and everything, like, that's great. That's fantastic.
Awesome. Were you letting some of your friends read the stories when you were that young?
Not really. I think my brother read some of it and he gave me very constructive feedback. I love my brother. He never minces words, and he was the individual who got me into gaming actually and got me into a lot of these, sprawling fantasy worlds. He introduced me to Redwall and Dragonlance and Jacqueline Carey. So he read a little bit of it, but by and large, I was pretty insular with my writing. And my parents don't read books in English for fun because it's their second language. So, I didn't really, I wasn't about to share it with my, friends that I played kickball with or anything like that.
So then you decide to go to school and you go to Harvard. Congratulations. And what do you major in?
not writing. I majored in neurobiology with a secondary or minor in health policy. I thought I was going to be a doctor.
Okay.
And for a while, I was obsessed with Atul Gawande, who's also a very brilliant, complicated doctor, writer. But standard story of being pushed to find a practical career that is secure, that you can lock yourself into. So I pursued a degree in neurobiology, graduated college, realized I would likely be a terrible doctor because I have zero patience and would have awful bedside manners. Decided to spare the world from that. And then went into the business side of healthcare, sort of still bleeding heart, feeling like, oh, I want to save how healthcare operates in the United States. Did that for about 10 years. Went to business school in that period. Realized that healthcare in the United States is very difficult to save and probably beyond my scope. And here we are today.
I absolutely adore that.
Yes.
So while you're in college, though, go studying your bio, are you taking creative writing classes? Are you taking anything creative? Are you?
Yeah, I took 2 or 3 creative writing classes, largely through the summer school.
Okay.
So I spent a lot of my summers doing research on campus in wet labs with
Right.
various organisms. And as part of that, I always took 1 or 2 summer school classes, which was nice in a way because Harvard is this institution of higher learning that thinks very highly of itself. And I think the core term creative writing classes were stacked with people who were writing very literary fiction skewed type of manuscripts, which I actually love literary fiction. That's what I really grew up with in high school and in college, but it's not something I think I naturally write.
Yep.
And therefore the summer school classes were actually more filled with normal people who were more amenable to writing genre fiction, like thrillers and rom-coms and things like that. And I found that I jive with them a little bit more. So to answer your question in a very long-winded way, yes, absolutely. I was taking classes during college.
And now, while you're taking those classes and you're taking, are you writing like long novels? Are you short stories? And are they romances?
Yeah, they were not romances. I took a long hiatus from writing, and I have to credit my instructor, Julie Ann McNary, for getting me back into it. She basically told me this is something you have to do, and you have to make it a priority in your life, even if you do go on to become a doctor. So at that time, I was actually really interested in the idea of how much we deserve the how much we deserve the boons, for lack of a better word, we have in life.
Okay.
And I think being as like an institution like Harvard, a lot of people say, oh, you worked hard to get here, but everyone knows a lot of that is oftentimes not true. A lot of times it's because you had connections or you were just simply raised in the right neighborhood at the right time. So I actually ended up writing a historical novel about my family back in China, they were left behind in 1949. The portion of my family that was left behind in 1949, following World War II and then leading into the Cultural Revolution, and how this one decision my grandmother made to leave at the right moment and not get stuck in China really helped sort of pave the path for my parents growing up in Taiwan, and then eventually me growing up here in the States, and sort of the opportunities that afforded me. And I felt like that was so much of that is just like one person made a decision generations ago, and that has allowed me to do what I live the life I'm living here today. So it was a historical that sort of like a dual timeline historical that I was working on at the time in college.
And did you finish that story?
I did.
Did you? Okay.
The first novel I ever finished. I queried it, got an agent with it who ended up, I think, being a scam artist. That's another story. And then that sort of soured me on publishing for a little bit, and I stopped writing for another couple of years. And then when I returned to it, that's the sort of phase 3 of my writing career.
That's horrible. I'm so sorry that happened to you.
That's
That's terrible.
Yeah.
But when do you start writing romance?
This is the single player is the first romance I've ever written. And it's the fourth manuscript I've completed.
Oh wow.
So I didn't start writing this until 2022, and then I wrote it in the course of like 3 months or something like that. And I think it was just like in the middle of the pandemic. I mean, obviously, romance is having sort of a new way, a renaissance right now. And during the pandemic, I tore through rom-coms and thrillers, frankly, and that's sort of what made me think, oh, maybe I should try my hand at writing this genre. My wife will tell everyone and tell you guys that I'm not the most romantic individual in the world in real life, and my friends are all like, "It's a little surprising that you wrote a rom-com," but hey, it worked out. So
It's in there.
I think it's awesome that the first time that you write a romance, you get it published. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, read we fortunately, me and Auntie were fortunate enough to be able to read the book, and like, I mean, that's a great book. So like, congratulations, that was awesome. Like, first try. Oh my gosh, that was awesome.
yeah, thank you.
So when did you started working on the book in 2020? That's when you first started to write single player?
No, I actually I was writing like a women's fiction book about Chinese American food in the States and what it means to eat authentic Chinese food in this day and age. In the States, wacky hijinks ensue when this Chinese American chef tries to open a hibachi restaurant, which you'll know is not, doesn't have its root in China, really. So that's the project I worked on actually in 2019, right before the pandemic, and then into 2020. That's the manuscript that got me my current agent, the fantastic Abby Saul from the Lark Group, whom I think all their authors you very skillfully interviewed.
Everyone's lovely too.
Yeah, she knows how to pick them, I guess. So I was writing that one. That one got me Abby, and then I wrote another book set in China, contemporary China, about the climbing culture. So rock climbing culture out there, because I used to climb a lot. So this is the third book I wrote over the course of the very long pandemic, which we all survived.
Yes.
So let's get into your writing style. So are you a wake up in the morning and write for 8 hours? Are you just morning, late at night? How does that all go for you?
I am, whenever I have an uninterrupted stretch of 20 minutes, let's get a few words down kind of writer. I wish my life currently allowed for more regimented writing, but between my day job and playing D&D with my friends, which is really important to me.
Priorities, yes.
Priorities, walking my dog and, going through the single player book launch. It's really just wherever I can grab 20 minutes to jot down a couple of sentences. I'm not a morning person, so I'd say if I do get an uninterrupted stretch of time, I'm more likely to like go through till midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. than I am to wake up at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. and go crack at it.
Awesome. And what is a good day of writing for you? Is it like, are we talking thousands of words, or are you happy with 500?
That's a good question. I think NaNoWriMo, and I think a lot of writers, their entry to, regular writing is through NaNoWriMo, or at least was through NaNoWriMo. NaNoWriMo really incentivizes word count as the only measure of productivity. And I feel that can sometimes be counterproductive because you end up adding words for the sake of adding words. Like I do sometimes like even feel my brain going like, well, if you don't contract that becomes 2 words instead of 1.
So true.
So a good day of writing, well, what I'm trying to train myself into accepting is that a good day of writing is a day where I feel good about what I put down on the page. And even if that's just thinking about a plot beat, a character arc, doing research, that should count as a good day of writing. In reality, my sort of lizard brain still comes online and says like, oh, you didn't get to 9,000 words, you got to 963. You're kind of a failure, aren't you?
Yeah.
So I still shoot for 1,000 more per day, but I've missed that target many days in a row now.
I hear you.
put that on a t-shirt or something. It's not the words that count. Like I think all the writers in the world should have that as a t-shirt.
But it does feel like it, doesn't it? Like you have to get in your this amount of words, and otherwise you're not being productive. You're not going to meet those deadlines. And yeah, I mean, some days you just can't. Just life intrudes and you just can't do it. So
and I think it's actually important to have that forcing function at some point, because you also can't be too precious. And sometimes I can feel myself getting very precious about having the perfect sentence in place, and you got to keep going at some point. So it's a tough balance.
Yeah.
And is it easier for you to draft or to edit, or is there one that you like better than the other?
I will edit all day, baby. I hate drafting so much. That's not true. I do like drafting, but I think the unpredictability of drafting, the open-ended question of am I ever going to get to the end, is incredibly scary. Whereas when you're editing, you kind of have this, jumble, and you just gotta go in and clean it up.
So do you write the story fully and then edit, or do you edit as you write? Like, do you write one chapter, edit the chapter before you move on to the next chapter? Or is it just, I'm going to wait until it's done, I'm not going to worry about it until I'm finished with everything else and have everything on the page?
Yeah, I'm definitely a bit of a perfectionist, and it's something I need to get over. So I edit as I write. I like to say that I draft pretty clean. So if I see something is misspelled or I'm missing a quotation mark, I have to go back and fix it. I cannot possibly go forward. But if I figure out in chapter 6 that actually this person doesn't work in this vocation, but another vocation, and it's not going to destabilize the foundations of the book, I try really, really freaking hard to just keep going on and not go back and futz at the same chapters over and over again.
So hard sometimes.
I know, but I think Christie and I are the same way. We like to edit before we move on to the next chapter too.
Yeah. I find sometimes it's the best way to get yourself back into the writing mood too, is to reread what you did the day before. And of course, now that you're rereading it, you got to fix a few things here and there. And a half hour later, you're like, oh yeah, I should probably put some words down. So.
But at the end, it makes it a little bit easier because you don't have a whole lot to fix compared to if you were, waiting until the end and then realize, oh my gosh, I forgot an entire section that I planned to put in and it's not even here. So.
Yeah. What I do is actually I create a separate doc of like, these are all the things that annoy you. And since you wrote them down, you can go back and fix them later.
Nice.
So that's in. I'm only semi-successful because sometimes it annoys me so much I have to fix it right then and there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the age-old question between Angie and I'm the plotter, she's the pantser. So how do you go about doing your book? Do you just sit down and go, or do you plot?
I am a pantser. So Team Angie, I suppose.
One for Angie.
Except Kristen and I, we flip now.
A little bit.
Really? Well, I'm so curious about that.
Yeah, we'll tell you after.
Yes, I am a pantser. I wish I were a plotter, and it's funny because I'm an obsessive plotter in all other aspects of my life. I think that we had a contractor coming in, and I was like, you haven't told me 3 days ahead of time what time you're coming by, and that's stressing me out. That's how much of a plotter I am. But somehow when it comes to creative writing, I have found every single book that I've plotted with, the usual story beats and like even down to the chapter level, by the time I get to like chapter 8 or 9, I'm like, this is boring. I know how this is gonna go. I'm gonna move on to another project.
So one thing, like with pantsing, do you know already, like you kind of know where you want the story to go? Do you kind of dream it out, or like kind of have an idea of this is what I want to happen here, and then kind of the bones of the story already in your mind, and then you just kind of write in whatever happens to characters?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's like what's interesting about the rom-com genre is it's almost kind of prescriptive, right? Especially if you're using a set number of tropes. At what percent of the book you have to get them to start enemies to lovers, like single player is. At what percent of the book you have to get them to thaw toward each other. At what point you have to like insert a little bit more yearning. Obviously, there's chemistry from the beginning, but like physical contact? Like, at what point do you introduce that? And you know it ends with a happily ever after, or at least a happily for now. So I think that's actually what's really great about rom-com for someone like me is I already have that hazy structure given to me, but I don't know how they get there, and therefore it's a little bit more of it's like bowling with the guardrails up a little bit.
So for character development, I mean, since you're pants, did you just come up with the idea? Like, how did you come up with the idea of single player? Where did the characters come from, and like how did you develop those these particular individuals? Like, they're amazing characters.
Well, inside me there are two wolves, and the two wolves are named Cat and Andy. Uh, but no, in all seriousness, how did I come up with the idea? I played a lot of video games during the pandemic, and I became really interested. I think video games still have sort of a bad rap or a bad reputation, but I became really interested in video game as a narrative device because I was at a talk with Sibo Campbell the other day. He's an author who wrote Sky Full of Elephants, also debut author, has done incredibly well. And he said that books are really the most immersive medium for telling stories, which I agree with, because you sit with a book for at least a couple of hours and you're holding it with your hands and you're actively hallucinating as you read these, marks on paper. But I would counter that video games are probably on par, or if not on par, even more immersive than books, because there's actually somatic or like haptic feedback. Like, I'm moving my thumbs and my character moves right, left, up, or down, right? And if you've ever played any sort of like scary zombie apocalyptic video game, your heart rate goes up when scary stuff happens. And when you die, you feel that viscerally in a way that I think is different from books, except for maybe books written in the second person. Because books, you're always being told a story about someone else and you can relate to them on a very visceral level, but you are not them. And video games try to break down that barrier and make you that character. So I became really interested in the medium, and became really interested in how the self-insert capability of video games forces you to make decisions as an avatar, as a character, for like in this like fantastical world, right? So you're in a game and you're like, do I want to go right or left? Or more consequentially, do I want to save A or B? Do I want to push the red button or the green button? Video games make these decisions very binary, or at least very sort of segmented. It's very clear, like, I'm making a decision now and there will be consequences. But I was curious if I took that character, like someone who was obsessed with video games, and sort of applied video game logic to their personal life, what that would look like. And that's how Kat came about. Kat sort of played a lot of video games, starts applying video game logic to her personal romantic relationships, and is like, and in video games, you always want to like do the right thing to make the other NPC, the non-player character, like you. So like if you want to seduce a sexy cat boy, you say things or do things that you think that they're gonna like. And to a certain extent, that's kind of what you do when you go on a date. You like say things to not be weird and hopefully make someone like you. And so I was very curious if like Kat did that in her personal relationships, like how that would fall out. And that's sort of where the seed of this book came about.
Oh wow,
That's really
Sorry,
cool.
I have really long-winded answers. I apologize.
No, I mean, I love that though. I love that. Yeah.
And it's absolutely true, because then when you read the book and you hear what you just said, it's like, oh wow, like that's it perfectly fits Kat.
Yeah. And I'm in the very beginning stages, and now hearing that, I'm probably going to focus more on that now, just to see the decisions that are made during the course of the story. So that's
nice.
Where did Andy come from?
I came up with the character of Andy as a foil to Kat.
Okay.
And I wanted a character who, despite being a game dev, is actually very mired in the real world because of some terrible things that happened to them in the real world. And you already know from the back of the book that Andy got doxxed, and a lot of what happens to Andy has happened to game devs, to voice actors in the gaming industry, has continued to happen to game devs and voice actors in the game industry. I think most recently, this was just a couple weeks ago, Erika Ishii amazing non-binary Asian American voice actor, plays a lot of TTRPGs. They were just harassed for being cast as the protagonist in the sequel to the Ghost of Tsushima series, which is Ghost of Yotei. And that's just ridiculous, right? They got cast in a role, they're playing a character, and gamers, because, and so this goes back to the book I'm reading, because because games are such an immersive medium and we take on art as a part of our identity, when that art doesn't evolve in a way that we want it to, we feel like we're personally being attacked somehow. And I think that's what you see with like The Last of Us, with Ghost of Tsushima. A lot of the drama coming out of that is that fans felt like, oh, this game is part of my identity, and now you've taken it in this direction that I don't resonate with, and that makes me really, really angry. So that's how Andy came about. I haven't really seen that in fiction anywhere, that sort of like disordered relationship between media and creators. And I wanted to represent that.
She's a super interesting character to me because she, like, I mean, the things that have happened to her are terrible. And I absolutely, well, it's a happily ever after. So she does live through it. But like, I mean, the way that she goes about it too is like, yeah, you go, girl. Like, go.
Yeah.
I want to see this more. Like, yeah, it's good. But and I know that we spoke about it before we started recording, but I just want to thank you for making me feel even just a little bit like I actually knew what the gaming world was about, with references to like Dune and like Mario Brothers and Animal Crossings and Zelda, like all those. Like, it's like, oh, I kind of, I don't really belong, but like I kind of, I can, while I'm reading it, I can like totally say like, yeah, like I know this, I know that. So it was great. I really, really.
No. And I'm here to tell you, if you've ever enjoyed a game, you can call yourself a gamer. Just like
Awesome.
You don't have to read 50 books a year to call yourself a reader. I reject that.
Awesome. Then I will proudly call myself, because it was awesome to read it and say like, oh, I get that reference. I'm so happy. That was great.
I know.
So is there one thing that you've done in your entire career that you think made the most difference and got you to where you are today?
Ooh. I think the only thing I can confidently say I've done is to keep writing. And I think this goes back to earlier, I was waxing philosophical about how my grandparents made this decision back in 1949 to leave China and all that. But I carry that belief with me today, which is that everything in life, so much in life, is about luck and timing. And publishing likes to position itself as a meritocracy, but so much of it is about luck and timing. Like, did I work hard on this manuscript? Absolutely. Have I cried over it? Absolutely. So has probably everyone else trying to write a book right now, right? And what makes me more worthy of being traditionally published than someone else? It's luck and timing. And, the fact that I found a great agent, a great editor. Romance is having a moment right now. So I don't think it's anything I did other than I kept going at it and, struck gold, or at least some semi-precious mineral.
Good for you for saying it, because I think persistence is a lot of, like, any artist, right? Like, persistence is what you need to, if you want to succeed. It's just try again every time you get down. So.
And write a really good book too.
Yes.
That's what you did.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Speaking of that book, I'm going to ask the question that Angie usually asks, and I'm like always like, oh, that is just so hard to answer. But do you have a favorite character in your book?
That's interesting.
We stumped her.
The first name that popped into my head was Sally.
Sally.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was silent because I was trying to figure out why her name was the first name that popped into my head. But I think it's just that I think Sally is actually more of a normal person than everyone else in the cast. I think single player at least, Kat and Andy are sort of on extremes, and they're not. If you're not in the gaming industry, they're probably not, or like you're not a huge gamer, they're probably not relatable to at a certain point because Kat is so into. Kat's probably more into games than I am, and I'm not a game dev. I've never been doxxed like Andy, right? But Sally is just this normal lesbian woman who has a normal job, and she's like kind of out of the closet to her coworkers, but she doesn't want to be like super weird, so she doesn't tell people she is actually also a gamer and plays TTRPGs. And she like has hang-ups about that. That's what causes friction in her relationship with Kat because Kat is like so out and proud about being a gamer. And I think that's why I have a soft spot for Sally because she is so complicated and normal.
Mhm.
I find it flabbergasted. Like I am like literally like I know you can't tell, but I'm flabbergasted that you chose Sally. Because for those who haven't read the book yet, she's the only lawyer in the whole place. Like she's not she's the only non-gamer. I mean I would have said like Philo or like
Yeah.
but like wow, like that blew my mind. You just blew my mind, Tara.
So I feel like readers might think I'm making fun of normal people, normies. I think I call them or Kat calls them normies in the book, but I mean the world is made up of normies. Normies are like omnipresent for a reason, right? They're good,
They're
fine
normal, yeah.
people.
Yeah.
So I maybe it's that. Maybe it's that I feel like maybe I did Sally dirty and I want people to realize that I actually do really like her.
So
I,
oh,
you
I'm
go,
sorry.
Angie, because I
Oh,
can't.
no.
My brain's dead right now.
I was curious, do you hide any secrets in your book, any Easter eggs?
Mm.
Oh, so many, so many Easter eggs. I think Christy already got a couple of them. I will divulge one Easter egg that I will be very impressed if anyone gets. But uh, later on in the book, they go to a convention together. And uh, on the panel, the Compass Hollow Heart Render Games panel, there is a voice actor that they hired to play Sentinel in the game that they're developing. And I say the name of the voice actor is Layla Aubrey.
Yep.
And Layla Aubrey is an anagram for Laura Bailey, who is a BAFTA award-winning voice actor.
Wow.
She played the Deuteragonist in The Last of Us Part 2, the second season of which is coming out next year. She was doxxed for her character because gamers hated her character so much. And Laura Bailey is also on the very famous show Critical Role, which is a live play Dungeons and Dragons show. So that is a deep cut reference, and I'll be pressed. I'll be interested to see how many people catch that one.
Love it.
So did you how did you research this book? I mean, is it something that you're already, because I thought you would already be working in the field. So like it just, you're
So
so
true.
insightful. Yeah, I'm just curious how you researched this story.
Yeah. Well, I think it helps that I'm a huge gamer. So I think just gaming a lot and being on Reddit to the detriment of my mental health. It just serves, it's not really research, it's just my nerd passion. I think the other thing I did was I read this book, Gamer Girls,
Okay.
by Mary Kenny, which is a little bit about the history of women in games development. So this is really helpful. And then there was another book that I don't have with me right now called Slay the Dragon, that talks about game development and like the different phases of game development, the different departments of game development. So I think between this book, Slay the Dragon, and just generally being very immersed in this hobby of mine, helped me piece together.
The last question before we move on to our speed round is, what do you want the reader to get out of your book? Like what if they read your book and they feel blank, you're going to be so happy.
I think I would be elated if someone read single player and wanted to play a game again. That would make me so happy.
I did.
I did too. I was thinking like I should load up Animal Crossings right now, but yeah, good for you. I think that's awesome. Awesome. And I think that it will. I think you're going to get your wish because I think, anyways, it did it for me. I enjoyed that book from cover to cover. I love the ending. I love everything in between. I love the way Kat is totally emotions on her sleeves, the way that Andy is completely the opposite, and everything in between. Awesome job. Congratulations. Can't wait for the whole world to read it. It's awesome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And now we're going to go to our speed round questions. Are you ready?
Sweating a little bit, but yes.
No. Really, they're gonna be okay. Do you cannonball into the pool or dip your toes in first?
Dip my toes in first.
Yeah, I would do the same thing. Would you rather cook the dinner or bake the cake?
Both.
Oh, nice. So you love to cook, you're into the kitchen.
Yes. If you go onto my Instagram feed before my book deal, everything was food related. So
Sounds good to me. Number 3 is if you had a chance to change one thing in your past, would you?
no, because I'd be a different person.
Great answer. Number 4 is which part of the day do you like the most?
Probably 6 p.m. because the workday is done, but there's still enough hours in the night to be productive without being disappointed in how little you actually got done.
Yes.
Nice. I'm looking forward to 6 p.m. tonight because of that. That sounds delicious. Yeah, I like it. I was going to say I walk with my dog, but no, that was much, much better. So number 5 is if you're singing karaoke, which song would you sing?
Chop suey only because that's what my wife sings at karaoke, and she loves karaoke. And despite most Asian Americans loving karaoke, I secretly hate it.
No.
It's not just Asian. I love karaoke. I love seeing people up there singing their heads off. It's really fun. Number 6, which of your 5 senses do you rely on the most?
Sight, boring answer, but it's true.
Nope, absolutely. Number 7 is a fill in the blank. So it's if my dog could talk, the first thing they would tell me is
Go away.
leave me alone.
Yeah, my dog likes my wife, and that's about it. He tolerates me.
Doggy.
Mhm.
I like you, so it makes up for it. So number 8, if someone were to take a candid picture of you at any point during the day, what would the picture most probably be of you doing?
It would probably be me drinking something, either coffee or water.
Nice. I like it. Number 9 is on a scale of 1 to 10, how anxious would you be if you had a day without your phone?
I want the answer to be 2, but I know it would be like 9.
Yep. And would it be because you can't contact anyone or because like what would give you that anxiety?
I think I've developed a reputation for being very responsive, both at work and in my personal life. My mom trained it into me when I was very little, and she would text me and be like, "Why haven't you responded? I know you're on your phone all the time," which is true. So it would just be that the fact that I know that I have pings coming in and I'm not living up to my reputation.
Oh, that's sweet, actually. So, and finally, number 10, the last question is how long do you think you would survive in a zombie apocalypse?
Oh, 2 hours.
Which is longer than I would. So, thank you so much for answering those questions. We love hearing the answers.
Thank you.
So is there anything that you're currently working on that you have coming out other than single player, which is coming out on what date?
Single player is coming out in January, on January 7th, 2025. Yes. Am I working on anything right now? I am poking at 2 separate projects. One of them is another sapphic rom-com featuring 2 Asian American leads that at a 15-year college reunion. And I'm interested in exploring how 2 people who were not right for each other 15 years ago can grow into being right for each other 15 years later.
I love that.
So less about sort of like there was a big misunderstanding second chance romance, but like they legitimately shouldn't have worked out back then, but maybe they could work out now.
That's
cool.
Yeah, I like
So
that.
that's the big project. The other project I'm working on, I'm sort of poking at, is set during the pandemic. It's not a rom-com. And well, set right after the pandemic, and it's about an Asian American woman who goes back home to pack up her deceased parents' home.
Oh, wow.
But I'm not quite sure if publishing is in a space ready for pandemic stories yet, especially pandemic stories featuring Asian American leads that like really grapple with what Asian Americans had to sort of live with on a day-to-day basis during the pandemic. So we'll see. It's also been very challenging for me to write, so it'll probably be a while before I finish.
Love it.
Where can people find you on social media?
They can find me on Instagram at a very long handle, which is Tarzan Parsa Gaga Pan. I created that handle back in 2013, and now I feel like maybe that was a mistake. It's very long, but here we are.
So I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. And I know we've interviewed a lot of your agency brothers and sisters, and just enjoy so much having you all on. You're so nice. Like, just a group of people. And we're really excited about your book coming out in January, and hopefully people are going to go into the description box and click on the link and go buy it or pre-order it, depending on when you see this video. If you enjoy these videos, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for you to be notified of any other author videos that come out. And if you have any links on the screen, just click those. And we just wanted to thank Tara Ty for coming on the podcast. And we just love talking to you. It was so much fun. And you got to come back when your next book releases. Definitely.
Yes, please come back and tell us all about your second book.
Yes.
Okay, will do. Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure talking to you. Just expounding upon the words that we love.